Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Howdy, y'all. This is Red O'Loughlin on the Wise Ones on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everywhere in the world, because the USA Global TV and Radio Network is truly a worldwide network. And today I am super honored. I mean, absolutely flabbergasted to have Karen Akiens appear with me today. Karen, why don't you just go ahead and join us on in here, and we'll get the introductions in as we talk to each other.
Sure.
And I met Karen a while back. We're both former military. We attend a military luncheon once a month usually, and occasionally we have a chance to do a 30-second elevator speech, and then depending on what's going on, sometimes a minute, sometimes a little bit more, depending on how many people are in the room as to how much time you get. Well, one of these times we had that little extra time, and Karen went on and on and on. My goodness, I couldn't believe how much stuff she does. And so I said, hey, you'd be a perfect guest on this show. And we're here to share basically our knowledge, our wisdom, our lessons learned in life. And you started out in the military a long time. You may have had a career before that. I'm not sure. But
No.
started out a rather mundane, every workaday kind of thing in the mechanical end of naval aviation. And you kind of worked your way up into being a plane captain. So why don't you tell the audience a little bit about what it was like to be a mechanic, and then what that transition was, and what a real plane captain is, because that's a term I don't believe most of us are familiar with if you're not in the aviation field.
Well, I was a jet mechanic, an air crewman, and a plane captain. And basically, I worked myself up because at the end I was turn qualified. So I was the one in the cockpit standing on the brakes with the airplane chained down and the wheels chalked, running the engines up to full military power to test them, the newly installed engines. So we were adjusting the throttle linkages while I was in the cockpit. And then when you do that, it's a lot of power because you could feel that airplane straining at those chains, and the chocks are what's basically holding it in place because it's digging in, and you're standing on those brakes to keep the airplane in place. It was fun.
All 110 pounds. All 110 pounds, right?
Yeah, it was a blast. Then I also got to hop on a couple other airplanes in the squadron because we had, besides the T-39s, we had C-1s and C-2s. C-1s were the old reciprocating engines, and C-2s are the turboprops. So that's the engines with the bigger thrust on them compared to the reciprocating. But the reciprocating engines, they were phasing them out and replacing them with C-2s. And so I got to hop on a couple of C-1s, the old airplanes, and land on aircraft carriers. And so I got to catch the wires on aircraft carriers. And that was a ride you'll never forget. There's nothing that can compare to that in a amusement park. I'll tell you that. And in my opinion, the Navy pilots are the best pilots in the world because they are landing on a postage stamp in a bathtub. And that postage stamp is moving up and down, sideways. You imagine it, it's moving.
And that was in your humble opinion, right?
Yes. But a plane captain actually takes care of the airplane when it's on the ground and in the air. The pilots fly the airplane, but the plane captain takes care of the airplane and the passengers. So we learn how to take the emergency doors out in case there's something that has to happen in flight where we're going to have to exit over the wings, or if we have to pump down the front wheels, if the hydraulic pump fails or something happens with the hydraulic lines. For example, one time we did have an emergency where someone installed the brake lines backwards on the airplane and they quality checked their own work. They don't do that. And then, so we didn't know that on visual inspection. We can't see that those brake lines are installed backwards. We only found out when we took off and the wheels went up and the brake lines snapped. And we saw the hydraulic fluid in the cockpit going down like that. So we had no speed brake to slow down for landing, and we had to pump down the nose to get it down. Luckily, we had 2 little reservoirs in the nose with emergency brake fluid or the hydraulic fluid to do those actions. So I learned a lot.
As I say, aviation is an inherently dangerous business, and it has a tendency to weed out its weak members because they're not paying attention. As you say, you don't QC yourself on a job that can be life-threatening. On any job in aviation, it's just not the right thing.
No, you just don't quality something like when you're taking care of passengers like that. You do not quality check your own work.
No.
Something that's life-threatening like that.
But then you spent some time in aviation after you got out of the Navy. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I actually went in the Navy right out of high school, 20 days after I graduated high school. So that's why I had no other work experience before the Navy. And it taught me how to pay attention to detail and to be organized. And so when I got out, I started working for a small airport that had a bunch of pilots. And one of the pilots had a brother who was a lawyer, and he needed help in his office. And so I applied, and he liked my military evaluations. He hired me on the spot. So I started at the bottom as a receptionist, worked up to legal secretary and then paralegal, and put myself through school at night to get my bachelor's degree. And by the time I was in paralegal, I was doing the legal work, working for the 3rd law firm that I was in by that time. And so I decided to go to law school. So I tell people I got into law by accident.
A planned accident.
Yes, it was the guardian angel looking over my shoulder, telling me what doors to walk through.
Okay, so you ended up with your law degree. And then you went and got a master's in law also on top of that, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, actually, when I was in law school, I found out I could do the JD, which is a law degree, the MBA, and half of the Master of Law in Tax at the same time. And so I finished that in 3 years and then worked as a lawyer in Philadelphia while I finished the Master of Law in Tax and worked at night working as a lawyer in Philadelphia. And then when I finished that, I decided I wanted the heat and humidity back, so I came to Texas.
Okay, so you ended up in the area of tax and accounting and other related fields. Why that particular area?
When I was working in law firms, I found out what areas of law I did not want to go into. Because when I worked in the 3 law firms before I went to law school, I was exposed to civil litigation, family law, medical malpractice, personal injury, employment law, and criminal law, along with estate planning and probate. And so I learned I did not like criminal law. I'm not a criminal law attorney because I don't like representing people who I think are guilty. I'm sorry. And then civil litigation, I have no patience for civil litigation. I'm more of a direct person from point A to point B. Civil litigation, they want to go around the mulberry bush to get to the point where they should have gotten to in the beginning. And that's what a waste of money, in my opinion. But you need civil litigators. Because, I mean, I'm just not one. And I know attorneys who specialize in those areas. And I will refer clients out to those attorneys if they need civil litigation. So when I went to law school, I learned what areas of law I did not want to do. I did not want to do medical malpractice because, again, I saw too much fraud. Personal injury, too much fraud. And so I loved tax. The first tax course I took, I blew the curve. I got an A+ on the final. And in law school, you only take one exam. So that's your grade at the end of the course. And I got A+. I aced the whole thing because I understand tax. And so that just segues into estate planning and business planning because it's all encompassing. And then probate is handling the estate, which again is tied to tax. So I specialize in asset protection, estate planning, business planning, probate, and tax. I am an expert in those areas.
Well, let's just talk a little bit about, we have a lot of individual entrepreneurs that watch the show. We have a lot of them that are guests on the show. And when you own your own business, there's a lot of extra tax benefits, and most people know those. But sometimes they don't always understand the benefit of something. For instance, mileage. Mileage can be racked up a number of different ways. Training, there's just so many different deals. So maybe we take 2 or 3 or 4 simple individual things that a 1 or 2 person business might really benefit by having access to somebody with your skill level.
Well, I tell them they need a good CPA in the beginning because a good CPA can help them take all the deductions they need on their tax returns. And also, I tell people you need more than one business because you need a business that you enjoy doing to help offset another business you enjoy doing that might make more money. So you don't pay as much tax. So when you pay less tax, you give yourself a raise. And so when I meet with clients, I look at what they want to do in their business. And then I tell them, okay, this is how you might want to structure it to help save taxes in what your goals are. For example, if someone's going to make around, they say the gross income is going to be around $300,000 a year starting out, then I tell them you might want to consider being taxed as a subchapter S corporation. Create an LLC, but have it treated as a subchapter S, because then you could take a reasonable salary for the income you have, and the rest would be treated as just a distribution. So you'd only pay payroll tax on the reasonable salary that you take. You don't pay payroll tax on the distribution. So you save money in that regard. But also, if you want to help save more money, then you create other businesses than stuff you're interested in. But you have to be interested in it. You can't just create something that you're not going to spend time in. You have to spend time in it in order to be you can argue with the IRS with a straight face that, yes, you are working in that business.
Okay. So let's say that I'm an author, but I can also be a speaker.
Yes.
And those could be 2 separate businesses.
Yes.
But I can also be a dog walker because I love dogs.
Yes.
Or I can also be a cake decorator. Or I can be anything that I have a passion in, as you say. If I don't have a passion in it, nothing's going to happen.
Exactly.
So if I have a passion in cooking and catering and whatever, then maybe I need to consider owning a roach coach and driving around on weekends or whatever it may happen to be.
Yes.
But those things give me more money back in my pocket because I have more deductions, legitimate deductions. And more importantly, you're working in an area that you love, something that you really and truly enjoy. I know you love dogs, and we'll get into dogs here in a minute.
Oh, yeah.
And so let's say that I have my law practice and I have this thing over here and I got this one over here. And oh, by the way, back there in the closet, I got another one. And in the garage, I got 2 more. But there are things that I really and truly enjoy doing. And as such, things are going to happen. Business is going to have a better chance of success. The economy and the pandemics and everything else that happen, they're going to happen. It doesn't matter. And if
Yes.
you're really not into your business, you're probably going to let it slide a little bit more than if that's my baby and I'm just going to hang on to that as long as I possibly can.
Mm-hmm. Yes. You have to have a passion for it. You definitely do. If you don't,
And-
it's not going to work because it's going to seem like a chore to you.
And then when
And
you
you-
start having these other businesses, you actually start meeting other people, like-minded other people, and they say, "Hey, Karen, you heard about this? Oh, I need to introduce you over to Bill," because now your networking is growing,
Mm-hmm.
your exposure is growing, the probability of success is growing, all because you started that second business that for whatever reason I didn't have time earlier, but now because I got some professional help, some professional advice, I was able to use a little bit more of my time more wisely. And now, boom, I think a very apt audience for something like this are retired people. You know, they have the time, they should have a reasonable amount of money. And I'm saying to cover basic expenses and not really undertake something that's an expensive undertaking. But, you know, whether it's something like writing, I mean, there's so many things out there that can be done. Virtual assistants. I mean, just all sorts of things are out there for somebody behind the scene. So
Yes.
now all of a sudden I have my retirement pensions coming in. I can now bill somebody for my time. It may only be 10 hours a week right now, but 6 months, 8 months, 2 years from now, you know, it might be a little bit more than that. And I
also
can even,
your brain
and
is
I can-
engaged. Yeah, your
and
brain is engaged. So you're staying healthy and aware of what's going on.
so
You're not
there's a lot.
becoming lazy.
So there's a lot to be said for that involvement from a personal, a productive, a satisfaction level. You know,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
so from that perspective, so if there's somebody out there right now that owns a business and is happy, maybe you could be happier.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Because it's keeping yourself busy. I mean, you don't overdo it because if you overdo it, you're going to regret it. Just keep yourself busy, but not too much. Still have some relaxation time, but make sure you enjoy what you do. If you don't enjoy what you do, don't do it because
Okay.
it's going to seem like a chore. You don't want it to seem like a chore. You want it to seem like fun, something
Okay.
you are interested in that keeps your brain engaged. And what I can also do with clients is I can also help them protect assets. Because once they start getting more businesses going, or even have the one business, most clients have hard assets. They don't have much liquid assets. That means securities or cash. And if they're older, then they would like to help safeguard some assets if they're married and one of them dies and the survivor has to go in a nursing home. They don't want to have to spend down everything or sell everything in order to private pay the nursing home because they have assets that are counted against them. So what I do is I call it preventative maintenance. That's from the mechanic in me. And I do planning that helps aim assets for one client that's living, becomes deceased, their assets in the estate, their value into an irrevocable trust for the benefit of the surviving spouse. And that irrevocable trust has special needs language on it. That means that those assets are not counted against that surviving spouse for eligibility of Medicaid. And it helps safeguard it.
When you take on a client like that, a lot of times they don't have, I'm saying a lot, sometimes they don't have a will and it gets probated with the state. What percentage is that typically that you see in your business?
With the wills, it's probably about, with the wills, counting the wills I create and the ones I don't create, about 50%. But if it's just the ones that I create, it's only about 25% because most clients, they're interested in privacy and they do not want to have to go through probate because probate courts are taking a longer and longer time to process stuff because they have new people in their office. I could tell when that happens because we get more hoops we have to jump through in the probate processes that never came up before and they're not in the code, but the court staff wants these hoops jumped through. So you have to jump through these hoops to get that probate done. If you get a revocable trust It avoids the probate. So that's what I do when I talk to clients. I give them a choice. You can have a will or you can have a revocable trust. So the will has to go through probate. And if you have a situation in your family where you
With
want to disinherit somebody, don't.
pandemic with one of our neighbors.
The what? I can't hear you, Red.
With the recent pandemic, the court system got backloaded, and stuff that should have been routinely handled was now shoved off a year or two or more.
Yes, that's what's
And
happening.
I have a couple friends that are still trying to get the probate done. That was actually started a year before COVID,
Yes,
and it's a zoo on a good day.
it is. That's a very bad
So you
probate
have
process.
some.
I could tell you stories that would take all day long on problems I've had in probate. There's some good results that are really quick, others no, because the courts just throw out additional requirements.
Okay, let's just talk about basic planning. I have a will. That's all I need, right?
For basic, yes. If you have no problems in your estate and no one's going to contest that will on your death, there should be no problems. It'll just be the normal processing. And it depends actually what assets you have in your estate on your death, whether or not that will has to be probated. So it might not have to be probated to transfer assets. It just depends. That's why I've got to look at the assets in the estate to figure out if the estate needs probate in the first place, or if other types of action can be done to transfer assets. Because some clients are shocked that says,
Okay,
I got a
so-
will. Don't I have to probate it? I said, no, not unless the asset requires a title transfer.
So I have a house that's in my name and my wife's. I have a car that's in my name and my wife's. I have bank accounts and savings accounts that are in my name and my wife's. We each have a will. That's probably minimum protection.
Yes. Are all your children born during the marriage?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Then yes, that would be minimum
And so
protection. That means your
if one
bank
of us were to
would
pass,
go. That means probably you don't have to file the will for probate if one of you passes, because you can do an affidavit heirship for the house to transfer title to the house
well, that's what happened.
if you have no debt. And then the bank accounts will go by right of survivorship, and the vehicle will go by affidavit of heirship. So no probate of the will has to occur.
Now I have a business, an LLC.
Oh,
I
that
have
has to be
social
probate.
media accounts out the gazoo. Okay. So now I have other extenuating things. So my LLC has to be probated.
Yes,
But
but we could probably
what about
do.
the other things? What about the other things we don't think of? I have, social media accounts. I have intellectual property. I have Medicare. I get all sorts of stuff that I probably have no concept even belongs in a final discussion of my dead
Okay.
body on the
Medicare,
table over there.
Medicare dies when you die. So there's no asset to transfer. But the other assets you mentioned, it would have to be probably a muniment of title probate, which is the lowest form of actual probate to transfer title to all the assets in the estate. That's only if there's no debts. If there's debts, then you have to go to an independent administration. That's if the will provides for it. And it's also if the will is self-proving.
How are you handling social media for people who are deceased?
That would have to be a probate asset, because that's the only way that transfers. And the executor normally has to get authority from the court to access the social media accounts. Because, for example, Apple, we recently had to have a motion put in the court to have the executor have authority to access the Apple account, because they would not accept the letters testamentary from the court. So it's additional hoops that have to be jumped through in order to handle all this, but we can do it.
Can my social media be in my wife and my name both, just as if it were the house?
You can assign the interest in the social media to, if you wanted to avoid probate, to a trust. So that means the trustee would then have a control over all the assets that are in the trust, and it won't have to go through probate.
Okay. That was worth the price of admission today.
Also, if I did do a trust for you, I would create the irrevocable trust for the benefit of the surviving spouse with special needs language. That means on the death of the first spouse, the surviving spouse would more than likely be eligible for Medicaid right off the bat.
Let's talk about that for a minute. Okay, we're going to talk about that here in just a minute. We're talking about what happens in the event of a Medicare irrevocable trust. And you were just getting ready to give us some details on that.
Okay, it's Medicaid actually, because you got to think aid. Okay, Medicare is everybody gets that when they're 65. Medicaid is you only receive that if you need additional government funds to help pay for the cost of a nursing home.
Okay.
So that's what I do is I help people become eligible for Medicaid. And to do that, you can't have any assets. You got to be destitute because it's aid, it's government aid. And if you don't have the ability to create this planning, then you have to spend down everything you own in order to become eligible for the government Medicaid. And I don't want to see that happen to people. I want them to have a bucket of money that they can dip into to pay for stuff that Medicaid doesn't pay for, because Medicaid doesn't pay for everything. If you spend down everything you own to become eligible for Medicaid, then your family members are going to have to chip in to pay for stuff that Medicaid doesn't pay for to help you. So I'd rather you had a bucket of money that you can access to help pay for that stuff. And to do that, you need to do planning ahead of time. It's preventative maintenance. That's what it is.
The issue of Medicaid and spending down, I've seen that real life in family and friends. It's not a friendly situation any way, shape, or form. So that is something you can definitely help people with and provide some guidance and counseling there. I've been waiting. I need to get into this topic so badly. Tell me about your dogs.
I have multiple Great Danes, and they're 100% European Great Danes. And so I want to keep that breed going strong. And so I breed 100% European Great Danes, but I breed selectively. So I only breed about once, maybe twice a year. That's max. That's all I do. And these dogs are really good dogs. They're big. They're bigger than me when they're standing up on their hind legs, and they weigh more than me. But they're big mush balls when they're with the family. Oh, they're also good protection dogs, because if they don't know you and their size alone and their demeanor when they see someone they don't know, they're intimidating to somebody that they don't know, that doesn't know them. And so that's good protection, but they're awesome dogs. And I have basically a Harlequin and a black and two blues that are breeding. So I have Harlequin, black, two blues, four Great Danes. I just lost one recently. That's why I'm still thinking about her. But she was an awesome dog. But I mean, they're wonderful. I DNA test them before they breed to make sure that they're passing all their DNA tests. They have no genetic defects, and they're very healthy. I only breed the healthy dogs. When some dog has a problem, I do not breed them, because I don't want to exasperate that genetic problem in the breeding pool. But I do want to put out there 100% European Great Danes that have great personalities, great temperaments, and are very healthy. And so I have a kennel called Standing Tall Danes, and I breed my Great Danes in that kennel. That's a business. And so I write off the vet bills, the food, the toys, the mats, the fencing. So that's another business I have that I am actively involved in, but I enjoy it.
Aaron, we had one question came in from the audience. Let me go ahead. They want to know, what is the difference between a revocable trust and an irrevocable trust? So if we can just pop back real quickly to answer that question.
Yeah.
Then we'll continue.
A revocable trust is revocable. You can change it at any time. Irrevocable trust is irrevocable. You cannot change it. So once you create it, it's basically set in stone what's in that trust. But when you create an irrevocable trust, you're basically giving a gift to a third party. You can't create an irrevocable trust for yourself and have it be protected from creditors. It doesn't work, not in Texas. And very few states allow it to happen. And even if they did, there's ways to bust through it, because you can't self-settle your own trust and have it be protected from creditors. But you can make a gift to a third party and create an irrevocable trust for them. And that is an asset protection irrevocable trust. Now, you can change those trust terms somewhat by creating a new irrevocable trust and having the trustee in the old irrevocable trust transfer it to the new irrevocable trust. So that's one way out of a irrevocable trust. It just depends what you're changing in the trust. It's basically called decanting to transfer the assets over to the new trust. But a revocable trust, very easy to amend, to change. You have full control during your lifetime. You can disinherit anybody you want and change what terms you want, change the people in it. Doesn't matter. It's revocable. So you have the ability to amend it in any manner you want.
So I can have each. I can have one irrevocable and one revocable, or multiple, depending on the gifts that I want to give people.
Yes, yes. There's clients that create multiple irrevocable trusts for the benefit of their kids or other parties. But with revocable trust, I'd have one. I'd have one revocable trust, unless you have separate property that you want to keep separate from the community property. In that case, you might have two revocable trusts, one to have the separate property, one to have the community property. It's just, what is your goals? That's what we have to look at and do the analysis there.
Getting back to your doggies, how often do you ride them?
The Great Danes won't let you ride them. If you try to sit on them, they're going to sit right down. But they try to go through between my legs, and I can barely allow them to do that. And I have long legs. So anybody who has normal sized legs, they would be on their tiptoes and actually on top of the dog.
A friend of mine I used to work with, she raised Chihuahuas for show. And as such, she was about 6'3", 6'3.5". The dogs were the same size as her high heels. And she was wearing 4 or 5 inch high heels at the show. Big, tall, blonde woman. You get lost looking at her and not seeing the dog anyway.
Yeah.
Now you own was it a national forest or a state forest or a lumber yard?
No, it's none of the above. I own a tree farm.
Ah, okay.
Okay. And basically it's pine trees. I have a little hardwood, some other types in there, but mainly pine. That's what the state of Texas wants you to have, because they want it for lumber. But you only harvest it maybe once every 10, 20 years. And when I bought this property, it had never been harvested. So it was just chock full of trees, and the trees were very thin because they were smashed together. So we harvested it last year, bought some strips in it, about every 16 feet. And we also cleared about 4 acres and left the big trees in the acreage. So it's beautiful. And so we got a little money. You don't get much from harvesting. Mainly you just watch the trees grow, but it makes the trees healthy. So in the future, if there's shortage of wood, you are able to harvest the wood from the trees. And so that's what the state of Texas wants. They want you to be able to harvest the wood from the trees. But also, the trees create oxygen because they soak up all the carbon monoxide. And they're plants. So it's the best oxygen or CO2 sucking up mechanism in this world. So I think people should plant more trees. But I have 33 acres in Plantersville, and I love it. It's fantastic.
Okay, so you help people with their retirement and their business needs. You help people with their emotional needs with your dogs. You help the earth with trees. You're just a big helper, aren't you?
Yes, I am. I love solving problems. So I like taking the problems that a person has. It's like a puzzle to me. And I put it together in the way that it best fits for maximum asset protection and reducing tax. And so when I'm reviewing the assets, I give them advice on how to minimize their taxes while I'm doing it.
Okay, I'm sure there's probably 2 or 3 questions that periodically you get asked that you would love to talk about that I did not cover with regard to the, let's just call it about retirement and or protecting everything. What should a normal person, just married couple, not no business, just besides the will, is there anything else that we really ought to be aware of? I hear about powers of attorney. I hear about other things that we really and truly need. What does Texas say, or what does Karen say that somebody really should have when they turn 60, 65 years of age?
Well, everybody, doesn't matter your age, you should have at the minimum your will, the durable power of attorney, a combination medical power of attorney, physician directive, declaration of guardian for you, declaration of guardian for your minor children if you have any, appointment for disposition of remains, and HIPAA waivers. Those are the minimum documents a person needs. Then you build up from there, depending on what's in the estate, what the situation is with the family. Is there somebody that needs to be disinherited, or does somebody need all their funds that they're receiving placed in a trust with somebody else managing it? Are there special needs issues with the parents or the kids? I mean, there's lots of factors to consider in this entire scenario when you're reviewing an estate. That's why I can't just tell somebody, oh, this will be the cost to create your documents. I need to have a meeting with them to do an analysis to figure out what's in their state and what their goals are, so that I can give them a quote on what I recommend to achieve what they want to do. It's not just cookie cutter. Every client is different. No two clients are exactly the same. They're not, because they all have different goals. They all have different problems in their families. I mean, it's people think, oh, it's just the same documents. I mean, but it's the same documents, but it's different words inside the documents. And also with the appointment for disposition of remains, people think, oh, I don't need that because I got, people that can handle it and take care of it for me. But some people don't realize there are some mean people out there. I had a case before the appointment for disposition of remains was created in the state of Texas, where these couple was married, a husband and a wife and a stepfather. Okay. And they had children born outside the marriage and children inside the marriage. And when the parents died, the children outside the marriage, the stepchildren of the parents who were the closest to the parents, the children born in the marriage were estranged. They didn't talk to them very much, and they never met their grandchildren. But the children born outside the marriage had no authority to handle the disposition of the remains of the parent who was not their blood ancestor parent. Only the children who were blood had the authority. That means the grandchildren were the only ones who had the authority. And the parents wanted to be or have certain stuff done for their disposition of the remains. The grandchildren, they didn't abide by those terms, because they were the ones who wanted the monies in the estate, but they were disinherited. So they were mad at the parent who was not the blood ancestor of the stepchild. And so the grandchildren went against that parent's wishes in the disposition of the remains, just to get even in their mind. So that is why somebody needs an appointment for disposition of remains, to name somebody to handle the disposition of their body, because there are people out there who will be very vindictive in any manner they can to try and get revenge, even though it's small-minded, petty. I've seen some really bad situations occur because the documentation was not correct. It was not in place. So that's why I recommend everybody gets the minimum documentation and then move up from there with their estate planning. And if there is a situation in the family where they are disinheriting somebody because they're estranged, don't do a will. Do a revocable trust, because the revocable trust will avoid the probate. The will requires probate. And when you go into probate, you open the door to a can of worms that will just blow your mind away. Because if there's somebody out there that is disinherited because they're estranged, they can file a contest on that will before it's admitted to probate, and it freezes everything in the estate. It's happened multiple times. I can give you stories that would just blow your mind. Are you shocked? I can give you another story if you got time. Do you want to hear it? Red, are you there? Are you there?
Let's hear it.
Okay, you want to hear it? Okay. Another story, true story. This dentist had a thriving this veterinarian had a thriving veterinary practice. Okay. And he was married first time. He had 4 kids. He is married, got divorced, married a second time, had 1 child, got divorced, married a third time, no kids. He did a will in his 3rd marriage. Then he got divorced. But in that will, before he got divorced, he gave 50% of his estate to his wife, then 3rd wife, and 50% estate to the child of the 2nd marriage. He disinherited the kids in the 1st marriage. All right. He got divorced. So under Texas law, all designations towards a spouse or a spouse's relatives in a will are null and void. So that means his entire estate went to the child of the 2nd marriage, still disinheriting the kids in the 1st marriage. Well, when he died, he had a thriving veterinary practice. And when he signed that will, he was doing surgeries that day. When he died, the will was filed for probate. The kids in the 1st marriage filed a contest and said he did not have testamentary capacity to sign that will the day he signed it, even though he was doing surgeries in his veterinary practice. So that contest froze everything in the estate. Nothing could get done. And his thriving practice went downhill because it took over about 1.5 years, maybe 2 years to settle this estate. And basically it came down to blackmail. The kids in the 1st marriage, they wanted money. So they continued to stay in the litigation with an attorney that I just did not like. And because he had arguments that were not valid, but the court, they have to hear everything. And so they couldn't resolve anything until either a settlement was occurred or the litigation was resolved. Well, the other attorney just kept dragging it on. That tells you I don't like litigation, but I'll take it in probate if I have to. But the kids in the 1st marriage, we finally reached a settlement with them because we told them there's nothing in this estate that you can get because it's all going downhill in value. And so they finally accepted that settlement. And the child from the 2nd marriage finally got a smaller amount than what he was initially due because those kids in the 1st marriage committed blackmail, basically. And that's because the guy had a will instead of a revocable trust. If he had a revocable trust, there wouldn't have been any will filed for probate. There wouldn't have been ability to file a contest on that will, and there would be no blackmail situation.
Well, Karen, we're at the end of our time. What is the best way for people to get in touch with you? I think you kind of covered your passion pretty well today.
Best way to get in touch with me is call my office, 281-962-5051. Again, 281-962-5051. Or you can email me, Karen, Karen, at akienslaw.com. It's AKIENSLAW.com.
Okay. I can try to get our production engineer here to put your phone number in real quickly if she can. Can you give our phone number one more time?
281-962-5051.
If we can get that one in, great. That way, whoever's looking at the show down the road will have visual on that one. If not, they'll have the audio backup for it. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and say adios. And we are, and there's a lot of different shows here on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. And I'm sure there's several others, including this one down the road, that I would love to have you get back and share that. Okay, now we got the phone number there, 281-962-5051. Karen, thank you so very much. I really and truly enjoyed our time today. Take care.
Well, I enjoyed it too. Thank you, Red.
Bye now. And this is Red O'Laughlin again. We're signing off on The Wise Ones on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. And please, if you can't catch us live each week here on Thursdays around noontime, 1 o'clock Eastern, join us on YouTube because all the shows are archived. Just go to the playlist and you can pick up over the last 3 years worth of programs we've had. So again, catch you all later on, and very, very shortly, and I mean just literally shortly, in a 3 or 4 minutes, I'll be back on the live streaming TV show here with Talking Heads, and we're going to be wrapping up our segment on a deep dive into nutrition. So join me, Red O'Laughlin, here very shortly on Talking Heads on the USA TV and USA Global TV and Radio Network. Take care and catch you all later on. Bye now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Simon MacDonald. I live in the West Highlands of Scotland, a very beautiful part of the world. Seems a long way from the USA Global TV station. But remember, USA Global TV is worldwide. It's a fantastic platform. And every Wednesday, I come along here as part of the show of the United Kingdom News and Culture. And it's just like a family reunion each time. It's one of these amazing stations that has such a beautiful, friendly, and intelligent atmosphere as well. And we reach out to an audience in the most unimaginable places. And I came here, I don't know, must be over a year ago now. I was introduced by Dr. Philip Chan, and I met Ian Plum-Turner and Helena Chard, who are co-presenters on the show. And then Diane Floyd-Bem came along as well. And I mean, the five of us, Dr. Jacqueline, of course, who is our host and our mentor, has just made this show work so well. Tremendous people, lovely time we have, and we impart a lot of information, a lot of knowledge. Nothing's rehearsed. It's all done off the cuff, and it all just gels. And we get great feedback from people coming back and saying how they're enjoying the show. It's lovely to hear, and it's lovely to get that interaction from outside as well. And we're all listeners, and some of us are elevated listeners as well. So we enjoy every second of it, and we hope you do too.